Hello, friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin.com. Before we take you to your favorite Sports History Network show, just want to tell you a little bit about some merch that you can pick up that represents your favorite SHN podcasts. So far, there's t-shirts, coffee mugs, and even books from some of the authors that do podcasts right here on SHN. Who could buy something better than that than have the history right from the gentleman that you hear talking about it? But we also are adding things each and every day. And where's that store, may you ask? Well, it's at sportshistorynetwork.com. Up at the top, there is the SHN merch button. Click on that. It'll take you right to the store, and you can be representing your favorite podcast and show the world that, hey, on the swag that I'm using, it's the headquarters of sports yesteryear, Sports History Network, and my favorite podcaster, the Sports History Network store. Shop there today. Football history is filled with rules changes, but one of the biggest about faces in football history is probably the talking and communication of a coach with his players. We're going to talk tonight with Timothy P. Brown of Football Archaeology as he explains the coaching one player during timeouts and the history of it and the rules. And Tim has his story and more coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And we're going to look in that portal today and go back and do some football archaeological work with Timothy P. Brown of footballarchaeology.com. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Darren, thank you. Looking forward to chatting once again. Always fun to talk about old-time football.
Yeah, and you have some real dandies that come out in the tidbits each and every day. And one that really caught my eye that I'd like to talk about tonight is you have it's titled Coaching One Player. And I find this very interesting on multiple levels, and my officiating ears go up on this one because, you know, I can appreciate what the officials had to deal with during these times too. So I'll let you take the floor here and tell us all about this.
Well, I think I said this 2 weeks ago, but there are certain stories that need background in order for a more current story to make sense. So,
hey, we're here to hear old football stories, so the more we can hear that, the better.
then you're going to benefit from that kind of idea and thinking today. So,
all right.
So this, for I think everybody, whether you lived through this era or not, you've seen, if you're a football fan, you've seen images of a coach standing on the sideline talking typically to his quarterback. Sometimes it could have been his mid linebacker, but most often the pictures would show the quarterback. And so it's obviously a timeout. And so they're, the two are conferring about game strategies and which plays to call, etc. And so, but the odd thing is, like, why the heck is he just talking to his quarterback? Because nowadays the whole team comes over, or especially like high school, the whole team will come running over coach and listen to coach jabber, 35 seconds and then run back and execute a play. But so this whole thing of the coach being able to talk to one player at a time during a timeout all has its background in the idea of coaching from the sideline. And so that was illegal really until, in the college game, it was illegal until the 1960s. It was illegal in the pro game until 1944. But so it all has to do with this idea that, originally the football teams were organized by the athletes themselves. They were club teams, just like any. I don't quite want to make it sound like, the club Quidditch team at some college or university today, but fundamentally it's the same thing. A bunch of guys got together and said, "Hey, let's play football." And so they organized themselves, and then it got popular. So a lot of people wanted to attend, and blah, blah, blah. So the game, evolved. But it had this fundamental belief that the game was for the players, not for the fans, not for the coaches. And so there's a whole slew of football rules and underlying beliefs that are aligned with that. And, some of it's kind of hidden, but even things like, numbering the players was for the fans, but it was opposed by the coaches for a long time. So that's why we didn't have numbers. But so one of the things that was by tradition, game run by the players, you're supposed to engage the players' brawn and their brain. And so coaches, fans, and spectators are not supposed to yell instructions to the players. And so that all worked and was, the tradition and the kind of the etiquette allowed that, or made sure that didn't happen until the late 1880s. And then people kind of started cheating a bit. And so they enacted a rule in 1892 that said, if somebody coaches from the sideline, it's a 15-yard penalty. And so, if you think about other and older pictures that you've seen of football teams, when you see pictures of all the players sitting on a bench on the sideline. You see pictures of all the players sitting or kneeling on the sideline. Or you see one or two coaches standing. And all of that was just, at various times, the rules morphed a bit, especially in terms of the number of coaches that could stand on the sideline or move up and down during play. But even when they could move around a bit, they still could not instruct the players. So there were things in the I want to say it's late 1930s, there were some experimental games where they had a 12th student, so a team member, maybe he was a smart guy, but he was like the third string quarterback. They'd put him out on the field to call the plays and instruct the team because he was a student, not a coach. So there were some experimental games, trying that because, again, student, not a coach. So, and even their rule that they had was the kicker, during times where they did allow tees, the kicker had to request the tee. You couldn't, someone on the sideline couldn't just toss a tee out onto the field. The kicker had to request it because if you just tossed the tee out there, that meant the coach had said, I want them kicking. I want them to try the field goal here from the 35-yard line or whatever. So anyway, so a whole set of rules like that. But then in, say 1940s, you have two platoon football coming along. And that allowed coaches to coach the defense while they were off the field or the offense when they were off the field. And then eventually in the 50s, you had, in the pro level anyways, they had what they called messenger guards, where teams would swap. They'd have guards run back and forth between plays. So that, the right guard would swap between one guy and the other, and they would bring in the play each play. And interestingly, a guy named Chuck Noll was one of the first messenger guards who performed that function. So
I think I've heard of him before.
Yeah, I think well, I know the listeners can't see that, but you're wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers hat, so I think you've heard of Chuck Noll before. But so eventually in 1967, they passed a rule that said, okay, now when we call a timeout, previously, even during a timeout, the coach could not talk to the players. They had to stay out there on the field. And even in injuries, the coach could not go out there. Just one person who was a medical professional could go out there. And so in 1967, in the colleges anyways, they said one player can talk to a coach, and So that's why you see all those pictures. And it had actually the high schools had made that rule change a couple of years earlier, and then early 70s, maybe late 60s, somewhere in there, the high schools also just said, let's allow all 11 players to come over to the sideline to talk to the coach. So again, it's one of those goofy things, but it's grounded in this whole background underlying people's belief systems about football.
But believe it or not, at the high school level, the phenomenon, even through my officiating career, it's only the last 10 or 15 years that more than one coach can go out on the field and more than 11 players can be out there. When they had it for a long time that I officiated, you had to have only 11 players and one coach, and they had to be at least inside the 9-yard marks, which is the top of the numbers. And you had to call, technically, if they did that, you were supposed to call it illegal substitution. I mean, we just tried to enforce it and keep them back, but it was a pain in the neck because how timeouts are. It's sort of chaotic, and you're trying to tell these coaches they can't. The defensive assistant wants to come out with the head coach and whatever. You got to chase them back, but they
lots
did
of emotions. Yeah.
Right. So the National Federation had to be like 10, 15 years ago. Finally, in this century, said, hey, you can have as many players and as many coaches come out anywhere on the field. And as long, but when that minute's up, everybody's got to be out of there and just the 11 players are on their own side of the ball. So it's still an evolving transition of that rule, at least at the high school level. And it's much easier to do it now.
I think, you raised a really interesting point of the viewpoint of the official, right? So, I played, I coached, so I have that perspective, what it's like to do those things, but I never officiated. And so I don't understand the game from that perspective and the pressures and the concerns, right? And so there's just, there's a lot of things out there in the rules that, even like the stripes on the gridiron, the 5-yard stripes. When there was a checkerboard, the checkerboard stripes. There's lots of things that were put on the field to help the officials, not to help the players.
Like the game they're playing behind me right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference between whistles and horns and all that kind of stuff. The final gun. There were so many things that really, they were instituted to make officiating easier and more regulated, more consistent. Because what do people complain about? Inconsistent officiating, right? So, there's a reason.
They still complain about that. If you watched the games in the playoffs this year and the regular season, even us old officials complained about some of them. But it's
but it really, like your perspective just lends a different lens, a different way to look at the game. And, so I appreciate that. It's just, I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, it's definitely something. I miss that. I love being out on the field. I love the people that I work with. I love the coaches and the kids. But there's some parts of it that I don't miss, especially when you have a coach that had a bad day and he's going to take it out on you because you're the easiest target for him and you're a sideline official. Those are always fun. But I like the gamemanship. I love doing it and the going back and forth with the coach, and that's part of the fun of it. And it's an exciting thing, and it's part of the game.
I have a quick little story I got to tell you. One of my favorite college memories. I played at a small college, and we had a game, and we had a backup quarterback who was just a kind of a trickster. And at one point, in the middle of a game, a referee, threw a flag, and then the play, ended up like 20, 30 yards downfield. And so, but he had thrown his flag near the line of scrimmage. And so this quarterback goes out on the field, picks up the guy's flag, stuffs it in his pants. And so the official comes running back. He's a headlinesman or whatever because he's right along the side. He comes back and he can't find his flag, and so our coach starts yelling at him like, "What are you doing? You're delaying the game." So then the guy heads heads back upfield looking for his flag, and the quarterback takes the flag and dumps it back on the field where behind him, and then the official turns around, sees the flag sitting there, knows that it wasn't there like 5 seconds ago. he just smiled and he didn't say a damn thing. He knew one of the kids was yanking his chain, and I just think I recall that it's just one of my favorite memories in college. Because it was just like a small college, it really didn't matter, right? But it mattered, and so for somebody to think about to think that quickly to pull off that trick, and for the official to just let it go, I thought was just total class, because he could have flagged somebody, right? But he let it go.
But it seems like you'd have it like every season, at least once or twice, you'd have that kid that just wants to help you out. They're just that helpful soul. And you throw a flag and it's a spot foul, and if the flag means something, it wasn't like offsides or something. It's holding or intentional grounding where the flag really matters. And you throw it, and you're that's why you have a flag. You're marking that spot, and you're following the rest of the play. And you, like you say, you might end up 30 yards downfield or 80 yards downfield, and you got to come back to the spot. But I'd always be turning around to come back, and there's this kid. I could see him pick up the flag and say, "I'll bring your flag to you, Mister." No, don't do that. Thank you, but no thanks. Yes, but that's all. You always run into that kind of stuff too. But
hey, my teammate didn't have the official's best interest at heart.
I think that was a little bit more malicious, I think. Are you sure this was a teammate and it wasn't the person telling the story?
No, it wasn't me.
You seem really have a lot of firsthand knowledge here.
I was kind of a trickster, sort of person. So I've done things like that, but no, I didn't have the guts to do that.
that took a little bit of moxie to do that, I'm sure. Especially with everybody in the stands seeing what you're doing. So, hey, Tim, great stuff as always. This coaching and quarterback relationship and coaching with from the sidelines is always an interesting subject, and it's amazing how much that's evolved over the years, and how much the perception of what the coach should be doing on the field and what he shouldn't be doing has changed over the last 100-some years. That's just great stuff, and really like how you portrayed that out here in a story in this podcast tonight. And you have these thoughts and these tidbits that come out each and every day, and on your website and social media and an email, and maybe you could share with the listeners how they could enjoy some of these too.
Yeah, so it's real easy. My site is footballarchaeology.com, and as long as you spell it right, you'll find it. And so you can there's every story that's out there, there's a subscribe button, and if you subscribe, you get the email at 7:00 Eastern every day. Comes right to your inbox. And then alternatively, you can just follow me on Twitter at Football Archaeology. And then, obviously you can just go find it and, periodically search it and see what's been published. But, from my perspective, the best thing for me is if you get the thing every day, and, if you got a busy week, let them pile up. And then when you got a little bit of time over the weekend, scan through them and see what interests you.
All right. I'm glad that you mentioned that I'm not the only one that has trouble spelling archaeology. Every time I write it out, and even if I spell it right, I look at it and is that right? It's just one of those words that just doesn't look right. But hey,
Archaeology.
Yeah, I think maybe as an American, we pronounce it with that archaeology, and the A just doesn't seem like it belongs there. But hey, great stuff, and spell it right and put the .com on the end, and you'll get to Tim's site. And Tim, we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, very good. Thanks, Darren.
We're taking a peek over at the chains and the down marker. It's 4th and long. We're going to have to punt the ball and get on out of here, but we'll have another series tomorrow for your football history headlines, so be sure to tune in. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast. PigskinDispatch.com is a proud affiliate of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.